University, an important, let's say, group of people working on emotions, polarization, and populism. And she is the coordinator, the whole team. And it's great to have her here. And I hope you will have further discussion with her own research areas. I'm not going to get into the details, but let me just say that she is also part of de-radicalization in Europe and beyond, detect, resolve, and reintegrate, again, another European project. And maybe I can also underline that her thesis was in ideology and discourse analysis. I know that some of our students are already interested in this. And from there onwards, she had been working on the whole discussion of populism and how populism is actually in different country context is created and recreated. And currently, as I already mentioned, we're part of a project where Emilia coordinated with respect to European parliamentary election, a very different kind of research. And I hope she will explain the details, which made the team members somehow, I don't know, enjoy or suffer or a combination. So I hope you will have time to hear, to learn. And then Halil Hoca, I think he needs no introduction, but still, thank you for him to accept this in a very short time. He's a professor in our university, and he had been the dean of the Faculty of Communication, and there we had more chance to discuss what's going on in the world together in various occasions. Maybe I will just mention, because some of you are already aware of, but some of you may not. He's currently the founding director of Istanbul Institute of Communication. And it's a new institution, and it's in the way of sort of having newsletters and more different kinds of research and a space for new discussions, let's say. So thank you very much for being with us, Halil Hoca.
Thank you.
Let me stop here, and I don't know, maybe you would start.
Sure.
Okay, so let's give the floor to you. And we also have Zoom participants. It's great to have you all. And if you have questions and comments, you can just write. Gizem will be there to follow. Let me get the floor.
Oh, thank you. So you're getting my PowerPoint up. Nowadays, when we are discussing the social media and how to how to make sense of what's going on in Twitter and Instagram, we have several challenges in this regard. These are closed, privately owned platforms which restrict data access in significant ways. And this question was kind of like how to do this. We have had to solve a lot of methodological issues. And I'm working currently as a datafication research program director at the Helsinki Institute for Social Sciences and Humanities. And we'll be doing that for another year. And but my background is in political theory, and I'm and sort of East European studies, and I'm working in political science. So this is like my attempt to also make sense with this huge team that has been working together, how to exactly. So, okay, let's try again. So we have been engaging in this research challenge of seeing what is circulating out there in TikTok and Instagram. And if I understood correctly, you are also interested in particularly the far right in this context. But I have to say that it's for us, it's been very vital to be looking at like all kinds of political communication, and particularly also failures of political communication in the center left and center right, and successes for that matter too. I can't see the slides and so maybe I just stand here. And make this a bit closer. So this research that has been conducted with a huge team of researchers from the University of Helsinki, this background tech team that we have is a lot of these hipsters from Helsinki, our research group, who have put their efforts into this project. We have already done it once for the EP elections in 2019 with Juha Herkman. We only studied Twitter, and Twitter at that point was the most important platform, as you remember. And then suddenly we have completely different situation with X and Elon Musk buying it, and the research access to that platform withering away, and the interest also withering away. So then we decided that we would try our luck in trying to understand how TikTok and Instagram and YouTube would be working as research sources for discussing political communication just before the election. And so we did. We actually did this together with 3 Horizon projects and 1 transatlantic partnership project that we had running in the research team, and Mores was also a collaboration from intersecting Horizon project. So this is a team of people who actually themselves spent 4 weeks on these 2 platforms. It's about 1 hour a day. They had 2 different profiles on each platform, Instagram and TikTok. Because for YouTube, the good news is that you can just still get it free through the API access, and that's nice. So we did this study, and this is more or less the process of research. So, yeah, when your people on the street, if you can't hear me.
No, she's checking, no problem.
This research design was made already. We started before the Horizon project started in February. We passed through the ethics review, and here the important thing is that we need to we could rely on the European Copyright Act, for instance, that we would be able to do this. Now we have been doing data gathering, but the data that I am actually presenting to you is coming from this free recording part done by these 30 people around Europe, all these organic and synthetic. And then we are doing this free analysis of all the data. We also scrape data, we match it to for this, and we are making a database that would be the but this is really the post API situation. I was listening to colleagues from the US who were explaining how they had the possibility of accessing TikTok data, but they had to be making such deals that would have been disclosing all the research proposals and all the data. So I also remember discussing it here with you guys. So we decided not to. Perfect. Oh, now it's better. So so then we decided that we would just do this relying on the European Copyright Act and try to make sense of it. It's a lot of data when you think about screen recording your phone. So the amounts of data are just very huge. So you store a lot of data. This is a problematic. And then you have to be splitting all this data, etc. But like for you guys, important issue was here that these people were doing this on these 3 synthetic profiles and per country, and these data was done.
Emilia, maybe you can just explain what you mean by synthetic profile,
Yeah.
because I think
Okay.
probably people won't guess.
Yes, so this is basically the way in which we try to mold the algorithm to follow three different political orientations. So the center right, the far right, and the red-green profiles in each country. And this is a bit difficult, by the way, in 10 countries in Europe that we had. And but it was very challenging to choose the right orientations because, for instance, in Central Eastern Europe, the left doesn't really exist in the same way as it does in Western parts of the Europe. But we do comparative research, so we just have to live with this. This was a video that showed how we installed this Gradfeed OS on these profiles. This is these synthetic profiles. We try to reach the usual users of TikTok and Instagram, so TikTok in particular, and we generated these profiles with artificial intelligence, getting these consumers out there. And this is explaining the variation in the on the national level. So like which are the parties that would be the ones that we try to reach in these particular cases. So we would have, for instance, here in Hungary, a very interesting country currently. It's Fidesz, the ruling party, which is far right. And then we would have like the center right party, a newcomer PISA, who has currently actually overtaken Fidesz in the polls. And then we would have this like center left, that is the traditional opposition now since 2010 Hungary. These are the sort of in some countries it's quite easy. For instance, here in Portugal, Chega for the far right, PS for the center left, and then PS for the center right. So I will give you some details about this. So that's how we operate. Thanks. Yeah. So this is the sort of protocol that they were supposed to be following when they are doing this research. This is maybe not interesting for us, but then they were submitting these research notes, and this is where the data that I'm presenting today is coming from. So they were saying like, whom did they see on each of the profiles on that day? So not the platforms, partly on my platform here was TikTok, for instance, and partly by just the profiles themselves. So they had like first they answered for TikTok and then answered for Instagram, and then they started answering general questions about this. So here, the interesting bit is like epistemology, that we would know if we go through the videos that people have recorded, we would know whom they saw. But these research notes are done after they have been watching the videos. And then we ask them, whom do you think you saw? So that is a different question. It's a very relevant question because people would like get an impression of having seen something and something not. So the mismatch between the reality, sort of whom they actually saw and whom they claim they saw, is a relevant one if we want to think about whose videos sort of matter in this case. And of course, like at the end, we were asking them, how anxious did you feel when watching these videos? And we offered them like our weekly meetings and take stuff. So these are some issues with data gathering that we had. We indeed offered them weekly meetings and office hours, and most of us in Helsinki also were doing the same data gathering. And of course, as often with humans, researchers did not ask the crucial questions, and they didn't always, it would have been important to be like more on one-to-one basis with everybody of the 30 people. Here are the hours that people generally spend on this per country. And overall. And then we have the current situation where we have the second draft of the country reports, that where we are basing our analysis of this data that we got from the country reports. So the perceptions of people who what they have been seeing. And these are like the results of the perceptions of people what they have been seeing across Europe. This is now data from across the continent, and here you have the social democratic parties and the left parties in the center left very prominently, and then also Greece. But EPP is also strong. So you can see the Instagram, the situation is quite similar with that. When we talk about non-strict, and they will be here. For instance, these can be like new parties or not quite parties, and they can be also non-European, like Trump. So these are the figures for the ECR and ID groups for the far right prominently, but also they were quite a lot of PPP. So the conservatives, European People's Party, no, the traditionalist right parties, and they are also trending quite strongly here. But the center right comes by getting also some social democratic content, whereas they get like less of this idea, and definitely further less. So these are the visibility of those in the feed. Then we will have these changes over time. You can also see how the feeds are becoming more solid in this like till the end. And what the researchers have been saying is that they also going to decline, particularly on certain accounts after the elections that were held on 9th of June. And then we've got here for the far right, for instance, it's again interesting that we would be seeing some of this European activity on usually is national activity. This is indicating that. So they have been getting mainly national content in all three accounts, but also some European content and non-European content for these different accounts. So that's, but that actually matches with whatever we did in the previous study on the EP19 and existing studies that the national communication is what matters in the EP. And there's the more detailed distribution of themes that we ask people say what did they see. So here's also Europe, and the Green Deal would be prominently there, also economy for the center left, and for the center right, we have immigration again, as with the far right, and economy is also some strong issue. Defense and war, Ukraine, Gaza situations also probably in this defense usually called into this. Then what they would be seeing here more is this agriculture, which is trending at the end, but it is existing also. And then there would be issues of gender here prominently. And if you look at the themes of the far right, one theme is like emerging over the others, and then you would have like more or less an equal footing everything of this other side. And that's also like the line line. Here you can see how difficult it was for the center right counts to get into political content. So they were watching like Catholics. So it's something else. and here on the far right as well. So I just had a chat with the person who was collecting them for Finland, and she was saying that she was watching a lot of weightlifting videos. It's on her far right. Account as a young male. So. And here you would have like the kind of negative themes that would be there. So which of them, like anti-themes, racism, etc., how they would be. Anti-Muslim content is emerging something quite visible in the right-wing accounts, whereas it's now less so here. And then you would have the you could also say that the anti-content was but then these are kind of showing overall they are then visibility. Correctly, this should be already. And then this is the post study exit survey sort of for the researchers, and they are indicating whom do they think they were seeing overall in this period, and or like irrespective of the accounts here. So a lot of people saw a lot of the PPP, a lot of people saw also a lot of like reads. These are also including the organic accounts of people. These organic accounts were super important for the study because they could watch whatever they like, these organic accounts. So they can watch the videos that they're not supposed to be watching on these politically oriented accounts. And they can also, so there are some interesting discussions they could be doing this. And for the far right study, for instance, it was indicated by my colleague that she saw very little of the content of the far right, but then on her organic account, she managed to get like a very solid feed. She did not see much of the Finns part, for instance, but that she saw like political things. So we put control over this. Are they able to direct their feeds into some direction? So this was again part of the themes. This was quite interesting as a question, and this is where we also base our policy recommendations on partly. So how do you feel? Where was it really successful political communication on Instagram? Not really, but TikTok is very good in terms of political communication. So that's what you are aiming at. This is your platform. And it was very easy to get the feed to collect this particular type of political content. I would also add that curation on TikTok was so much better than the curation on Instagram, so that the feeds were interesting. They were always somehow themed to something, and the arguments were developing on the videos that were following Instagram. So I do want to be writing about that, for instance, based on and then this is Finland. It's a case study for you. These are the synthetic accounts. We had a lot of like national leaders, but also a lot of candidates on these accounts. This is because we have an open list. So the candidates really need to be communicating in order to be raising up on the list. But also a lot of discussion revolved around national issues. So the leaders were presenting feeds. Then this one was about like how different were these accounts content from each other. So then you are being asked when you have like the same profile on two platforms. And then this is interesting that mainly they have been different, having different videos, Instagram and TikTok, and Instagram and the organic and synthetic accounts, because then that's also valid. But that it matters for politicians for also to be communicating on both platforms. and you can't rely on the fact that it will be open or seeing it all. So this is distribution changes over time in the EP study. This is the overall results on TikTok and Instagram. So this is just making a comparison between how you saw on both of the accounts. So here there are the organic accounts of TikTok and the synthetic accounts of TikTok and Instagram equally. So you would see what how we still manage to get quite a lot of political content from the organic accounts too. Then we are keeping these as part of the data set. And then there would be this distribution over time, themes observed on the organic and synthetic accounts. And the same thing. So this is working as a control because we don't really publish studies based on the organic accounts, but these videos are then part of the data set and they can be observed. Right, so we are trying to then merge this data set, and this is then we use LLM for making sense of it. It's kind of like interpretive annotation, and I'm quite interested in this sort of how on the one hand with AI we would get this metadata. Obviously, we get it if we scrape it, we get it from the platforms themselves. We get it based on also the research notes to some degree, but then we would get like facts where, what, who is, but also interpretation about what appears to be there, and interpretation by the researchers as like through the research notes, and then the interpretation through the LLM. And this is the LLM so the results. And here in this version, we have been looking into, for instance, getting some descriptions of what's happening in each video. And then we would be getting for some of the things of this color scheme, like as data of like what actually is in the frames. We use Whisper so we do this OpenCV computer vision library to split the videos into scenes. And then we use Whisper for the whole transcript to see what is being said in the video. Then we use Lava model, create descriptions of these video scenes. And then we generate the Lava model to summarize what was in that video. And then we would be passing to the results in space. This is what Tommy Toivio, our data engineer, so not data engineer, data steward has been doing. But anyway, and then this is something that our database would look like with two interfaces, one of them for access to videos, and then there would be another one that would be using this metadata, because we should be allowed to publish the metadata, even in this extent that the LLM is describing it, because it's not the same video. It's not really violating GDPR to have these are public campaign videos, so we should be able to do this. And that offers us like two types of unpaid data. Then I was discussing a little bit with myself a question of interpretation in this AI world. How do we make sense of this kind of data? So on the one hand, of course, we would have the results that would be giving us like indication of who is communicating what, but then also how are we doing this interpretation? So my argument was that we should live with this, the idea of interpretation as a basis of academic research. So we have like this realist and interpretive contestation. Often we think that it's important to know what is out there exactly. But I think increasingly the whole like emergence of populism in the first place is interpretation based analysis in politics is like needing us to sort of emphasize the role of interpretation as such. And now we have like human interpretation, but we also have the AI. So we can see, of course, we can actually recognize, I don't know, colors, and we can actually recognize that there are these and these words in these videos. Now what the new LLM sort of offers us is large language models can help to interpret the data in different ways. And then we can base our analysis of both the human interpretation and the machine interpretations, and then keep on like looking at it on a wider scale, and then also like a smaller scale, like doing deep dives, validating the data, looking closer, etc. But what you saw in this transcript here is quite a long, it's a very long sort of set of this, like, yeah, anyway, so that you saw that this is only one video, and from one video, the machine has made this much of data, and then we have like huge amount of videos. So of course, we are not reducing the amount of data that we have. We are increasing the data amount of data we have, and that can be a problem. And then so we have, of course, sort of some critical evaluation needed for like whether the AI is doing a good job, but we also need to be critically viewing whether the researchers have been themselves doing a good job in annotating the data. So it's gonna make a huge difference between the two, like somehow very verified human models over machine. And then there are like many different dimensions to consider in terms of ethics. This is also requiring quite a lot of computer power. We are lucky to have the access to the Finnish national research infrastructure, the supercomputers there. But then we also try to keep the data as light as possible and remove excess data, as there would be some, and of course, how to define this. Then this data access needs to be considered. We can't take our data here to Turkey, for instance. So, but there are other ways in which we can be sharing, and some parts of the data would be like more shared. Others, because we have to be also able to share online openly. And then we should be thinking diverse models of accessible publishing. And then this dimension to humans we discussed from the beginning part, from the data gathering, the weekly meetings, and also then to think about like how is our perception shaped itself when we think about like watching far right videos, for instance, on a daily basis. And this can be like, this can be really distressing, but what I've been seeing now in Finland, as this is a national day in Finland, and their usually political elites would be all gathering in the president's castle, nice building by the sea, the shore of Helsinki. And then, but then all the MPs, the members of the parliament, they are invited, that they are kind of bound to be going there. But two from the Finns party, from Finland, the radical right, populist radical right party, decided that they are going, but they are marching with another rally, which is known for being far right, extreme, organized by the extreme right, the far right. So, and not by the Finns party, but like further right movements. Some of them have been banned. So most of them have been banned. But the journalists, they were not able to deal with this issue. And they had already become so sort of used to seeing these Finns party in power and being like lacking media criticism, for instance, of this fact that these are the actual far right. So when you overdose yourself into this discourse of the far right, then maybe you'll get blind to it and you forget that just a couple of years ago, you were ready to explain what is behind these marches, who are actually organizing them. And now what I've been seeing in media, I've been criticizing as well, is that there's a lot of euphemisms being used as like patriotism. And that they say maybe some far right is taking part in this processes. Whereas the torch processing is originally designed by the Nordic resistance. Bad. So like, you know, if we expose ourselves also as journalists or researchers to this content, we might just get blind to the aspects of it.
Thank you very much. I think some of us feel that in order to understand even the research, we need a kind of basic literacy. Because some of the things that, as we are part of the research team, we are somehow get used to. But I think maybe in the discussion we can elaborate more that the whole process of creating synthetic accounts, following on TikTok or Instagram means that in order to be that researcher, you need to have some basic sort of literacy and also following, and also what you at the very end stated about this getting blind, being always exposed to that constant sort of information and symbolism. But I guess especially because maybe we're also dealing with this a lot in Turkish context, the whole migration, even only that, I guess, is a very, very important picture at the end of the day. Like how center-right and radical right has this migration as the first repeated topic, and somehow this whole changed the language, which is also important because as far as I know, in different contexts, both in Turkish context, in USA context, these issues affect also not only right, but also left and the whole discourse. So let me give the floor to Halil Hoca, but then I hope we will have a fruitful discussion.
Sure. Can we have my slides up?
Yeah, let's try.
They'll work.
Yes.
Okay. Desktop olacak. Şey yapalım. Slideshow. Bütün esprim kaldı.
I guess, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'd like to thank to the organizer for inviting me to talk on the US election process. Actually, I've been following the US elections, not for research, but just, you know, I'm interested in it. Why am I interested? Because it is fun. It's really fun to follow how the research, how the campaign process moves on. But besides being fun, it can be very instructive if we look at the right points. So the title of my speech is MAGA. You know what that means? Oops, doesn't work. What do I do? All right. So it means make America great again. But not to me. It's to the American conservative public. I have another title for that, which I forget. That's fine. I'm trying. Yay. Okay. So actually I have it done with ChatGPT. So the title is found by ChatGPT. It's a manufactured antagonism, generate autocracy. So that's the title. So I said that it is not only fun, but also instructive to study or to look up at American elections. So instead of like making, when I prepare for this talk, instead of just telling like huge, long theoretical things, I devise the game for you. And I would like you to play that with me. And that I call the Turing test of presidents. You know what Turing test is? It's the 1950s thing, 40s, 50s. It's where a human judge interacts both with a machine and a human through a text interface, right? You ask questions over the computer and you receive responses from the other side. It's either human or machine. If you cannot tell, all right, if you cannot tell which is which, then the machine passes the test and it is called intelligent. So I adopted to this presidential thing. And I have here a number of quotes for you, and I'll ask questions. Who said that? President-elect Trump or President Erdogan? Oh, this I revealed. I am sorry. Yeah, that is, the media is the enemy of people. Who said that? Trump. There you go. Who in this audience thinks that this is by Trump again? May I see hands? Anybody who thinks that this is a Trump quote? I know you're kind of not very willing because it could be both, and that's the point. That's Erdogan. All right, here's another. Foreign powers and internal traitors are working to destabilize our nation. Erdogan. Bravo. And here, one more. We will no longer surrender this country or its people to the false song of globalism. Trump. Yeah, because we don't hear much of globalism. That is Trump. I'm the only one who can fix it, believe me. Okay, one more. The press is spreading lies and is part of the opposition conspiracy. Trump again. I wish I had that buzz sound. Nah, so wrong. I know. Our future depends on strong, decisive leadership, which only I can provide. All right, who says it's Erdogan? Bravo. And last but not least, we must work together to confront forces, whether they can come from inside or out, that threaten over time to undermine the values and to erase bonds of culture, faith, and tradition that makes us who we are. Bravo. Well, I don't know if my game showed itself. So I was expecting more hands, frankly, but that's okay. Anyhow, so what I want to implicate here is that they are very close, aren't they? I mean, in terms of the discourse, the texture, the imposition of personality, strength, strong leadership things, they're almost like, copycat. Certainly, we can find many parallels between the political scene in the US and elsewhere in the world. Without making an in-depth analysis, I'd like to point out some, important issues, some issues that I think are important. First of all, as we have been listening to the speech right before me, there is the phenomenon of the rising right and far right that we always discuss. We need to define this a bit more in detail. Yes, in the last decade, the right has gained ground in many countries in a way that has destabilized a balance. So I'm talking about our mental balances. Whose mental balance? Like people like us sitting in this hall. So we are kind of disoriented with this strange sight that far right is rising. Of course, we, the intellectuals, the middle class, the liberals, left-oriented people, and who gathered here or any other platform to discuss why far right is rising. The expectations, dreams, and priorities of those of us speaking here or elsewhere are under serious threat, and I consider that to be a trauma. At least I define it like that. So, on the other hand, it is difficult to understand the background of this drama. Italy, France, Germany, Austria, Sweden, England, all the Western countries whose democracies we admire, as well as countries like Brazil, Hungary, Poland, which we think are candidates for this list. Push aside notions of high democratic values, inclusiveness, environmental sensitivity, discrimination, and go and vote for political tendencies that advocate the opposite of these values. I've been listening to Trump a lot. So he does this very, very clearly. So just, no environment problem. The US has no water problem and all this. He's just claiming right the opposite of these values. Well, when we look at the Turkish political scene, we see a public which, systematically rejects over 22 years, those values and part of the population. So instead of these values, we see an inward-looking nationalism, a governance approach dominated by authoritarian and religious values, anti-immigrant sentiments, admiration for a strong leader, and so on and so forth. So why? This is a funny question because we think that these are, I personally, let me not include you, but I think that this is so absurd to have a leader to defend values like that. So why? The question why is not easy to answer, but it is clear that the liberal credo, which I briefly define as high values, cannot penetrate what the wider society, especially the working lower classes, the underclass, the extreme poor, and even immigrants and minorities who are pushed aside and oppressed by the system. So everyone sees these values and appreciates them in words, but when it comes to voting, you see a divide, like, sometimes 52, 53% votes against these values. So I'd like to raise a kind of a notion, which I wonder what you would think. So in this talk, I'll use the example of the United States to talk about a glass floor that separates different layers of society. It is as if this glass floor, I was inspired by glass ceiling. Let's reverse it. It's as if this glass floor we walk on allows us to see those below, and those below can see up, but the glass barrier between these two layers, prevents voices from circulating. When I say up and down, I don't mean any class differences. It's not class stratification, but of course, class thing is also involved, obviously. So this is the idea that I have. So we are here talking to each other about high values, this democracy, blah, blah, blah. And it looks so obvious to us as to why larger portions of population just leave aside far right, fascists, etc. Why not more larger populations do not approve that? So let me turn back to the US, keeping this question in mind, and let me share with you some numbers as to what happened in the US elections. This is the electoral college votes that led Trump's victory. And that is, you see which states won by Trump. Isn't the map interesting? Does it remind you something? Well, it does to me, somewhat, So, well, this is not the right place perhaps to discuss this, but when you look at Turkey's 2023 election map, so it's as if the coastal lines have some favor to do, Anyway, I love PowerPoint, as you can see. Of course, we wonder what has changed in the United States compared to the last elections when Biden won. In which demographic groups are the Democrats who came to power with Biden now disappointed? On a county-by-county comparison, we see that the Republican Party increased its vote by 3 to 5 points in all areas shown in this table. In heavily Hispanic counties, we see a significant shift in the vote about 13 points in favor of the Republicans. It seems that the Democrats, who were up by 11 points in 2020, have failed miserably. Although only the 51, there's about 51% to be counted in the ballots when I took this statistic, but the results proved to be the same. So it is interesting to see a demographic group like Hispanics in the US to vote for Trump, who based a significant part of his campaign on mass deportation of the immigrants. According to figures issued by Migration Policy Institute, nearly 50% of the population born, 50% foreign-born population in the US involve Hispanic people. Of that population, about 25% is Mexican in origin. So we have to ask why there has been such a significant political reversal in a population group previously dominated by the Democrats. This voting by Hispanic population reminded me of the situation of Ukrainian immigrants in Czech Republic. That they actually moved to Czech Republic because of the war. It is a well-known fact that established immigrants do not look favorably on newcomers, even if they are of the same origin. So Ukrainian people living in Czech Republic, they do not like the newcoming Ukrainians much. Well, when I say I don't have a data at my hand, but just observation and anecdotal information. We have observed this in Czech Republic. In the States, in regions like Texas's Rio Grande Valley, for instance, the perceived chaos at the southern border under Democratic leadership has driven voters towards Republicans who promise stricter immigration enforcement. Many Hispanic voters in border communities view border security as a key issue impacting their safety and local economies. Apparently, the Republican focus on economic issues like job creation, taxes, and opposition to extensive government regulation has appealed to working-class Hispanic voters. For many, economic concerns outweigh traditional democratic appeals based on immigration or minority rights. So in other words, they say, look, jobs, poverty, inflation are what matters, not the ethnic origin or identity. So let's look at the campaign promises of Trump and Harris. Of course, these are not the all promises, but these are the prominent promises published in newspapers. I'm not going to read all of them. And taxes on tips, for instance, that has been discussed in Turkey as well at some point. And look at the expanded child tax credit. Trump promised $5,000, and Harris actually beat him at $6,000. Doesn't it look familiar? Whatever he gives, I give 10 more. So kind of an attitude is also, available in the US thing. So when you combine all these, I actually made a list of vision of the two candidates, what they say, in a sense, right? So immigration and border security is the top priority, one of the top priorities. Economic revitalization and revenge also, which doesn't appear here. National security, election integrity, and foreign policy focus. I will finish the wars in the world by the inauguration day. So that's a big promise and has been quite effective, I guess. So look at Harris's things. I cannot see my slides like here. But anyhow, I don't have too much material over there, so I'm luckier. So strengthening democracy, climate action, climate change action, affordable healthcare, education and equity, social justice are the prime vision statements or whatever of Harris. So in a country where grocery prices have increased by an average of 7% since 2020, which candidates' promises and vision are more attractive, do you think? In addition to this, we must keep in mind that the groceries inflation occupy the greatest portion of the working class budget in America, like it is in Turkey. In fact, when you look at the longer periods, you can say that Biden has been particularly successful in the area of general inflation. And in this slide, we see that the inflation has dropped from 7 to 3.5%. From 84 to 2008, we are talking about a country where inflation was not a great issue, really. In 2016, Trump, who took over Obama, has, so to speak, exploded the inflation. This, of course, is a pandemic effect. He just gave out money. So there has been a huge expansion in the money inflow into the economy. Biden is really, as I said, successful in this area. Obviously, the economy is important, but first it needs to be explained correctly. In other words, feel-good joy campaign, like, does not pay the bills. Secondly, it can be seriously questioned that the economy is not the only factor. And I'll come to that in a moment. So in the US, it is known that subjective experiences of economy is quite different from the objective accounts of it. While the objective accounts of the economy have been favorable for Biden, the subjective perception is quite bad thanks to the campaign, people who run Trump campaign. Like, for instance, what they call Bidenomics ads. So I'll try to show to you. I don't know if I can start the ad or maybe. Oh, yeah, just press that. Yeah, great. Anyways, so what happens here is that the Trump team has taken a tool from the hands, a discursive tool from the hands of Kamala Harris and used it extremely effectively. This ad, plus there's another ad that has been mentioned in the press so much, is the anti-trans ads. I actually didn't take because I find it very distasteful, but it's based on a speech given by Kamala Harris about funding the sex change for immigrants and prisoners, inmates, blah, blah, blah. So there, actually, a similar ad was run by Trump, where they say, look, your tax money is going to the transition for gender transition for the inmates. So it's like, killing three birds with one stone. First of all, the conservative America, the general America, is not quite, trans friendly. Secondly, they don't like criminals, obviously, and immigrants. And finally, they hate having their tax money spent on things like that. So, anyhow, so these ads run in two major outlets. TV ads run in high visibility slots like national sports events and the social media. So it is very different for a campaign to tell the news about the objective state of economy than having direct access to it via subjective experiences. Bidenomics ads by Trump campaign team played on this difference in a very strong way. But you may think that the billionaire Trump has invested a fortune for social media. You're wrong, actually, just the opposite. For the 2024 election campaign, both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are relying heavily on media and advertising spending, but there's a significant disparity in their spending habits. So Harris has, oops, what happened? Oh, was that up already? All right. Anyways, this is the slide. Harris has vastly outspent Trump, particularly on social media platforms. By late 2024, Harris has raised approximately $685 million as opposed to Trump's $306 million. Harris has invested in social media, spending about like $31.5 million, which is compared to 9.3 million by Trump. Additionally, Harris spent like 3.5 million on Meta ads, Facebook and Instagram in 1 week, while Trump spent just $890,000. In other words, in the campaign, Kamala Harris spent more money for sure. What is the difference? Well, the spending patterns highlight Harris's greater financial advantage and her focus on digital media, whereas Trump relies on a more diversified traditional media approach, right? What do I mean by that? Direct mailing, TV ads, and social media. But overall, Harris most definitely used social media more. So what can we learn from that? The recent US elections show that limits of the importance of money is limited. It's not just money. So what is important? To be honest, several factors created a very unfavorable campaign period for Harris. First of all, I already mentioned economy, briefly said, low-income families were hit by inflation and they were not so enthusiastic about great economy stories. That is also Bernie Sanders's major criticism. Right? Harris also failed to respond appropriately to ads released by Trump team, like this one or the anti-trans ad. And the time issue is, of course, very important. Harris had only 107 days to run the campaign, as Biden's team persisted until the very end. Now he's stuck. They said, I'm going to run, I'm going to. So. And finally, there's also this victimization story, which I think is very important. We are talking about a candidate, Trump, who had dozens of lawsuits filed against him, and also who survived not once, but twice an assassination attempt. He actually survived both metaphorically and actually literally of these events. And, fight, enter the strongman ideology. Harris talked about, in contrast, identity, immigration, democracy, anti-authoritarian position. Those were not the dominant concerns of the large portions of the voters. This, as I said, does not explain everything. And that is why there is a big solid support for Trump. Why is lower income voters voting for populist and very authoritarian right? Why is there such a strong anti-immigrant feeling? Why a women candidate was not considered? And why those who voted for women's reproductive rights on a multi-issue ballot, they have the ballots with many things to vote for. Those who vote for women's reproductive rights also voted for Trump on the same ballot. These are like kind of mysteries, and people are still speculating and doing research on that. But overall, what I gathered from my non-scientific research, let me say, that people thought their voices does not matter. The actual people's voices are not heard. The sense of belonging, solidarity that Trump actually tapped into. People thought elites are looking down upon them. Both Democrats and Republicans, frankly, failed to care about the people at the bottom. Overall, however, Democrats delivered this message to those who struggle with the economy. If you want to compete in a global economy, go to college. This is not a campaign promise, but this is the overall ideology of the Democrats. They promoted the idea that your earnings are directly tied to your learnings. But what they overlooked was the underlying insult in this message. For low-income people, the implication was clear. They were told that poverty was their own fault. Not only did they feel economically squeezed, but they also felt insulted by the system. And ironically, system is associated with the Democrats. Democrats were traditionally seen as the party for working people, but somewhere along the way, they become more aligned with the meritocratic elites, the representatives of the so-called system. This marked a shift away from the traditional New Deal politics. By 2016, things begin changing actually. Trump found success by speaking directly to people without college degrees, while those who have degrees seem to forget about their fellow citizens who lack them, which is actually 2/3 of the voters. 2/3 of the American electorate do not have a college degree. Since 2016, the Democrats have increasingly catered to professional elites rather than blue-collar workers. It is not just about economic inequality, job loss, and wage stagnation. It is also about demoralizing message they send. If you work hard enough, you can make it. It's all on you. To what extent was Trump's victory driven by economic, cultural, and social factors, and to what extent it was a reflection of elitism? Well, maybe it is all of those. The election ultimately came down to one question: which candidate can change the situation? Right? Well, Trump won that argument, while Kamala Harris could not, for various reasons that I have already mentioned. After the election, we asked whether it was driven by economic concerns or cultural. My position is that, to separate the two is a big mistake. They just work together. Economics matter, but the allocation of social recognition and esteem is just as crucial, and it ties into the cultural issues. Well, you may think, when I say this, you may think it has been a landslide victory. No, it is not actually. When you look at the popular vote, Trump has gained 76 million votes, while Kamala Harris was getting only 74. So it's not just like, a huge landslide, but still it is, of course, a victory. I'm just skipping some details and coming to the conclusion. I don't know how many minutes I talked. All right, so just last minute. So in the beginning of my speech, I talked about us, our trauma, and our balances. My aim was to make you think about Trump's election victory or Trump-like leaders on a global scale. Of course, the question comes to mind whether you need to be like Trump to win. We ask that question many times in this country. Of course, we don't say Trump. You can replace the name Trump by any name you wish. So again, are we going to stop defending high values that I mentioned at the very beginning? Liberals, left intellectuals, white-collar workers, upper middle class. So, I wonder if this whole woke narrative really, starting piss off the people. No. These are important questions to me for dealing with rising authoritarian tendencies in an increasingly complex world. Moreover, the divergence I want to describe here with the metaphor of glass floor is not unique to the field of politics. Just look at the civil society, NGOs, you will see the same glass floor. Obviously, I cannot offer a clear set of answers to these questions in the context of this talk. On the other hand, I also think that we need to realize the glass floor we are walking on and take it very, very serious. Obviously, this goes beyond the simple complaint that we cannot explain our agenda to the people. This very old complaint of the social democrats in Turkey has become a global problem now, I think, hasn't it? Maybe there are some global transformations behind the current events, developments that we have not yet fully grasped. I think we need a strong new academic scientific agenda to understand all these, or else we might encounter what former OpenAI board member Ilya Sutskever's prophecy of infinitely stable dictatorships. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much. I can't resist, and I will say, what about X and Elon Musk, which is sort of my after the election continuous questioning. But I guess the floor will also ask that. Okay, so let's have questions. I think we have time, so we can just have one question and answer. Then we will have more discussion, not collecting that. Yeah, please, if you want.
I would like to, because you ended up on this very point of the problem of the social democrats. And,
in Turkish context, this is why, I mean, working class not enough.
Yes, and in Europe, I sort of pointed out to the situation in Hungary. I think this is a global question, but in Hungary, which is where I did a lot of research, especially in the early 2000s. And I have a book coming out on the birth and death of democracy in Hungary that ends in 2010 when Orbán got to power for the second time. And there I'm discussing also this situation of the Social Democrats. And I completely agree with this analysis that you have. I love the metaphor about the glass floor, but then this and I've been using these metaphors of demography and democracy.
Mhm.
So I was just earlier giving a talk about this for a ministry in Finland as well. So that we kind of, this is a very strong tendency on the social democratic left to be focusing on the issues of socioeconomic differences, and thereby making these differences the most important issue. But if you think with the theory of populism in Eräs Klaus' work, the whole point is to be generating a people that is beyond these socioeconomic differences. And that's where the social democrats generally fail.
Yeah.
And we had like a moment in the US election, US politics with Obama. I was there in Chicago in 2008 as well. And he was able to transcend precisely those socioeconomic differences and talk in the name of a new people. But that was the trap where both Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris were falling.
Yeah. I agree actually, and there's also one more issue perhaps about for the states. Some commentators are saying that the people in the United States are losing the sense of belonging to a same community, even the physical space. I forget the gentleman's name, but there's a book out about social spaces where, you know, Americans were very proud of, like, you know, having a glass of whiskey with the boss, no matter how different they are, or going to same sports events. And this gentleman, whose name I forgot, was talking about these luxury boxes in sports stadiums where you have your martini and watch a national sports thing, and you don't mingle with the actual people. That difference has been, as far as I understand, very influential in people's minds, that, oh, elites are ruling us, the system is, you know, doing this, doing that. So that also is a loss, I guess. Musk is also very, no questions about Elon.
No, maybe there will be. Okay, let's give the
Actually, when you called me up, I'm sorry. When you called me, if I would talk, I was listening to, you know, Joe Rogan Experience and Elon Musk on it. So it was like, you know, it's like 2.5 hours or something. So
I mean, not sort of being partial or impartial, but like having the owner of that medium
yeah,
is
yeah,
something that different level that we need to.
definitely.
Only